47% of Puerto Rican households are on welfare, receiving tax dollars from Americans.
And this is what bothers me about a lot of the people that are coming to the United States, whether they're coming from another country or an island like Puerto Rico. If the place that you're from isn't doing better than the United States is doing, how about you keep your second and third world ideas to yourself? More bad news for Bad Bunny, and some Puerto Ricans are very mad, but if you ask me, they could stay mad.
Y'all are actually overreacting on this one.
I'm hearing a lot of this, and I really don't think we are. And if the FCC ends up determining that Bad Bunny's performance was in violation, that will be the NFL's lesson to learn. And I'm not falling for the whole race thing, because if you guys don't remember when Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake dealt with their wardrobe malfunction, that was a huge deal, and that completely changed the way that they aired the Super Bowl. They started to broadcast with several seconds of delay so that they could edit anything like that out before it actually was seen by the American public. Then there was a situation with Madonna when she had Nicki Minaj and MIA perform with her. And MIA decided to flip off the camera and use profanity at a point during her segment, and that led to her getting fined $1 million. Then if you remember a couple years back when Shakira and J-Lo performed together and basically turned it into a strip club, a lot of people complained about that. So not only do I not think that this has anything to do with race, I would honestly say that at this point, controversy and getting in trouble at the Super Bowl halftime show is a part of the tradition.
Not only did I learn that love is more powerful than hate,
I don't know about anybody else, but I didn't buy into the love is more powerful than hate message at all. And actually, I think that this performance was meant to sow divide in the American public. I also think that it was an insult to the United States of America, which is the country giving you the opportunity, Bad Bunny, when you went ahead and shouted out America and then went on to list all of the countries that are the continent of America, but not what we consider America. When most people say America, they mean the United States. And I do think that a lot of what was in this performance, even if you take the Spanish completely out of it, was meant as a slap in the face to the American public.
me and my children also learned things like chocha con bicho, bicho con nalga, and te estra rozando mi titilla.
Yeah, exactly. And not only was he vulgar, after when people were claiming that it was the most watched Super Bowl halftime show in history, that turned out not to be true according to Nielsen's ratings, which is what everybody usually goes by. According to Nielsen ratings, it was actually the 4th most watched halftime show of all time. And according to Samba TV, during the halftime show, 39% of the American viewing audience decided to click off or watch something else at that point. So to claim that it was the most popular or most watched halftime show of all time is a huge lie. And a part of the reason that I wanted to wait to make this video was because I wanted to see what the official ratings were. And for anybody that may be wondering what the top 3 were, I'll go ahead and list those for you really quickly. Number 1 was Kendrick Lamar in 2025 with 133.5 million. Number 2 was 1993 Michael Jackson, 133.4 million. And number 3 was Usher in 2024 with 129.3 million. Leaving Bad Bunny at number 4 with 128.2 million. And while I know that 128.2 million is still a huge number, need I remind you that we are in the midst of Olympic season, which translates to not even being bronze. That's right, if this were the Olympics, Bad Bunny wouldn't have even made it onto the platform. But one of the reasons that I think this is so important, especially when I mentioned that 39% of the American viewing audience decided not to watch during the halftime show. Well, as soon as you click off, you immediately do not have access or aren't watching whatever commercials that advertisers have paid before and after the performance, because who knows exactly when it starts and exactly when it ends. So it's kind of a rough guess. It's sort of like, okay, they're about to play the halftime show, we'll go ahead and cut this off right now. Well, the American market is huge because because if you don't know, the United States has a lot more expendable income than a lot of the countries that a performer like Bad Bunny is actually going to appeal to. So who really cares if you have more viewers from countries that either can't afford or don't have access to your products anyway? And how much does it help you if one of the main countries that actually can afford and does have access to your products has decided to tune out and is possibly missing the commercial that you paid millions and millions of dollars to have played during the Super Bowl? And that's where I think that the NFL is really going to have to rethink what it is they're doing, because one of those advertisers is Anheuser-Busch. And if you don't know, Anheuser-Busch just lost over $1 billion not but a couple years back when they made the mistake of using Dylan Mulvaney in one of their ad campaigns. So if you think that they weren't paying as much money as possible to be featured in the Super Bowl to possibly help them get back some of that audience that they still haven't been able to recover on, you are out of your mind. And that means that Anheuser-Busch is less likely to spend that same amount of money or more next year on the Super Bowl. And I'm sure Anheuser-Busch won't be the only one to think twice before they invest their dollars into advertising during the Super Bowl.
And fuma y se pone velikita. If that's not keeping with traditional family values, then I don't know what is.
And that really is the most annoying part, if you ask me, is that they keep trying to sell it to us as it was traditional family values and a message of love. And then they keep trying to remind us that there was an actual wedding during the performance. Well, guess what? Nobody cares about a wedding during a Super Bowl halftime show. That's not why anybody watches the Super Bowl. That's not why anybody watches a Super Bowl halftime show. And even though there was the inaccessibility for American citizens as far as language goes, and there was the vulgarity, and there was the fact that it was a lackluster performance, and there was the fact that this unifying message wasn't very unifying, there are still some Puerto Rican people that are absolutely losing it, so let's get into it. You ever notice how the moment something goes wrong, a car accident, a slip, some freak situation, suddenly everything becomes your responsibility? The paperwork, the phone calls, the stress, all while you're dealing with the aftermath. This exact thing happened to me a couple years back when a gas station I stopped at failed to secure a manhole cover and I stepped into it. Make your jokes, have your fun, but this really happened to me and I got hurt. And like most people, I just assumed I could figure it out myself. Until I realized how slow and confusing that whole process actually is. Then when I got a lawyer, it felt like endless back and forth. They were hard to reach and no clear answers. That's why I want to tell you about Morgan & Morgan. There's a reason commentators never miss a moment in the conversation. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. They've helped millions of people stand up to insurance companies and actually win. We're talking real results, real verdicts, and a team that knows how to take on massive corporations. I wish someone had told me about Morgan & Morgan when I had my accident. Also, Morgan & Morgan works on a contingency basis, meaning you don't pay unless they win your case. Plus, they make the entire process simple, straightforward, and actually accessible. Submitting a claim is incredibly easy. You can just click the link in my description, www.forthepeople.com/Ty Rivera, or you can just scan the QR on the screen and fill it out online in minutes. So if you've been injured and don't know where to start, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. What's up, everybody? So in case you haven't noticed, everybody is still shook over Bad Bunny's lackluster performance. And like I said in the beginning of the video, some Puerto Ricans are mad, and they can absolutely stay mad. It is your right as citizens of an American territory, let's be very clear about that, to be as mad as you want about anything that you want. But what you have to understand, to the Puerto Ricans that are upset about it, and I keep being very clear about that because this is not directed at all Puerto Ricans. This is directed at the Puerto Ricans that don't understand that just because you're proud that somebody from your island did something this big doesn't mean that we all have to give this person a get out of jail free card for anything that they decided to do during this performance. And yeah, I'm gonna say it, and I'm gonna say it with my full chest. This performance absolutely sucked. I don't know if you guys caught the last video, but on the last video I said I'm a sucker for pop music. Well, guess what? I'm also a sucker for just a really out of this world performance. And if this performance had been that, it definitely would have won me over. And I would have been on this same channel, not only praising Bad Bunny, but literally asking everybody, what are you so upset about? It was an amazing performance. That's not what it was. So when you add the offensive parts onto it, because what people have to remember about me, and yes, I do respect that some people are watching with their families, is that I am a single man. I have no children. So while I can definitely understand, and I definitely can see why some people would think that these words and some of the dancing that was going on didn't need to be broadcast into what could possibly be family homes, I personally do not have to factor that into my viewing experience. So if this had been just an amazing performance, I would definitely say, yeah, I understand how some people are upset about certain things and how some things may have been past the line a bit. But at the same time, it really was a great performance. But it wasn't. And so now, not only are certain politicians putting pressure on the FCC to look into the performance and see if any of what Bad Bunny did was actually against FCC rules, there are also some people saying that we should completely get rid of Puerto Rico as a territory. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh at that part, but it is kind of funny to me that Bad Bunny's performance was so offensive and annoying to certain people that now they don't even think that Puerto Rico should be a territory. And I somewhat have mixed feelings about that. So we're going to go through this clip and I'm going to tell you guys how I feel about it, because I think the person in this clip makes some really good points and gives people, or at least gave me, some things to think about when it comes to this debate about whether or not Puerto Rico should be a territory, if their influence is going to be what Bad Bunny tried to push on the American public on Sunday night.
I just want to say thank you to Bad Bunny, because after his halftime Super Bowl performance, ICE was one of the most Googled trends.
And this makes total sense to me, because what Bad Bunny and no other celebrity understands is the fact that you say something like love is more powerful than hate does not mean that we as a country are suddenly going to decide that we are no longer going to enforce our already existing immigration laws and let illegals come in this country unvetted. Because if you guys haven't already noticed, this has led to some tragic situations in the past, and I don't think some buffoon like Bad Bunny saying love is more powerful than hate is going to just make us completely forget about the safety of our own citizens and fling the doors open for absolutely anybody to come into our country.
Although frankly, what did anybody expect? I mean, people tried to say that it wasn't political, that it wasn't divisive, but he paraded around the flags of every South and Central American country, and then tried to say that everyone was American and that Americans really don't have a heritage.
All right, so I mentioned that a bit at the beginning of this video, and I think that's one of the things that's most insulting about this whole situation is when it comes to the United States and the word America, we as a country really have branded that word to mean something. When people think about America, they think about the United States of America, and America is just basically shorthand for USA. And then you take a person like Bad Bunny, who lives in and is from an American territory, which, being that it's a US territory and not an actual state, to me, that's basically saying you're barely American yourself. So when you're trying to pull the everybody belongs here, no, you barely belong here. So not only do you not get to redefine what America is and what we're referring to when we say America, you definitely do not have the right, the power, or the authority to just be like, this is all America, so everybody, you barely belong here. And I'm also tired of people acting like the United States doesn't have any culture. Actually, the United States has a lot of culture, and if you notice, whenever anybody blends into this melting pot, be they Mexican Americans, be they Black Americans, be they Asian Americans, be they Puerto Rican Americans for that matter, what ends up happening is that whatever it is they brought to this country becomes a fusion with American taste, American values, and American sensibilities. And this is clear and obvious in almost every part of American culture. So whether it's food, music, dancing, or even style of dress, what happens is when people bring bits of their culture to the United States, that then fuses with American culture, and then in a lot of cases cases, you end up getting a derivative that may have come from another country, but definitely has adopted American flavor. And yeah, I hate to break it to you, but that does become a part of American culture. Then also, when you get a little bit more specific and people try to say that white people in the United States don't have a culture, actually they do, and that's a lot of what people of color are copying when they decide that they have made it. And a good example of that to me would be a lot of times what you end up seeing in hip-hop videos or from hip-hop clothing brands that is considered like the aspirational living, like the idea of being in the Hamptons, or the idea of playing golf on the weekends, or a lot of the style of dress that's considered to be very waspy. Whether or not you want to accept that, whether or not you actually want to believe that, whether or not you want to actually acknowledge that, that is white culture, and that's what a lot of people of color aspire to, is to live like white people. So can we stop with the, well, white people don't really have a culture. There really is no American culture. Really? No American culture? What is American football? What is baseball? And I know apple pie may have come from the Germans, but is the saying as American as apple pie not a thing? Hot dogs are also an American tradition. And I was just reading the other day that hot dogs actually came from Germany as well. And maybe that's what American culture actually is. What we do in America is we make these things better. We make the rest of the world want to be like us. And that is an undeniable fact. No celebrity has ever really made it without making it in the United States. That's why they all end up putting out English language albums after a point. That's why so many of the major celebrities from other countries end up coming here at some point and trying to do music or movies or whatever it is they're popular back in their homeland for, because what America's brand is and American culture is aspirational living. Another huge part of our branding is freedom, and that's what allows you the freedom to live in this country and benefit off of the spoils of this country while complaining and pretending that you're not a part of this actual system and that you're not a part of this actual culture.
That is inherently divisive and political. It might be accelerationist of me to say, but I wish more people watched the Super Bowl halftime show than turned it off, because they would have been subjected to seeing this kind of stuff, and frankly, it would have woken them up even faster.
Oh, and on my last video, if you saw it, I said that I didn't care about the two guys grinding on each other and that they were covered up by the door anyway, so it really didn't matter to me. And I saw somebody had commented, and I ended up pinning the comment, but they commented about how this is desensitization and an effort to make people get used to this kind of deviant behavior. And I get what that person was saying, and my phrasing was wrong on that, because I didn't mean that I don't care about it. What I meant was, I'm not going to feed into this because I know that it's just meant for shock value. And as a person that's been out my entire adult life and remembers the 90s and the early 2000s, people have been using gay in order to rage bait for a very long time. Ever since Ellen DeGeneres first came out of the closet, and that made such a huge splash. If you'll remember, in the late 90s and early 2000s, so many shows had like a gay kiss, or they would put like a gay kiss or some gay innuendo into an award show or a concert or anything that they wanted to call attention to. And while I know that for some people this is extremely troubling and people trying to push a particular agenda, the reason that I don't really worry about this is because I am a gay man, and in a lot of cases I am surrounded by other gay men. And one thing I can tell you about gay, not only gay men but also lesbians as well, is that we for the most part are not looking for that. Yeah, there are small pockets that really want to push it, but what I can tell you is that most gays and lesbians are not worried about that at all. We needed gay marriage for very functional purposes so that we could see or be with our partners in their last days if things ever came to that, so that we could be on each other's insurance, so that we could enjoy the same tax benefits as every other American. Those are some of the reasons that we actually wanted gay marriage. And for a lot of us, it wasn't at all about acceptance from straight America. So when I saw that part of Bad Bunny's performance, for me, that wasn't at all anything to do with gay. That was Bad Bunny actually using the gay community as rage bait and basically throwing us under the bus because he wanted to make even more of a splash and be even more in your face in his performance and shock the American public. But what I want the entire at-home viewing audience to know is that this is not representation or heat that we in the gay community actually want. So unless Bad Bunny personally just decides to make this his entire brand and his entire thing, I don't really think it's something you have to worry about as far as gays trying to push a particular agenda. And actually, that's a huge part of the reason that gay, lesbian, and bi are starting to separate from the other letters in the LGBTQIA community, is because for the most part, we feel kind of like we're done. We got what we wanted. We have the same rights as every other American. What's to complain about? What's to fight for? Why do we have to shove anything in anybody's face?
I do feel bad for Puerto Ricans, though, because this just became the face of their entire culture. Their territory is now represented by this.
And it's unfortunate, but it's true. And this is what I think the Puerto Ricans that are upset right now and trying to make this about race need to understand, is that for a lot of us, it isn't about race at all. It's about the performance, it's about the language, and it's about the behavior. And if you ask me, when it comes to the Puerto Ricans that are upset, they're the ones that are making it about race because they're supporting Bad Bunny just because he's Puerto Rican.
And I say territory because it's a territory of the U.S. It's not a country. They receive $35 billion a year in federal funding, whereas they only output roughly $5 billion back to the U.S. in taxes. 47% of Puerto Rican households are on welfare, receiving tax dollars from Americans. That's more than any other state in the country.
47% of Puerto Rican households are on some sort of public assistance. That is an actual fact. And this is what bothers me about a lot of the people that are coming to the United States, whether they're coming from another country or an island like Puerto Rico, is that if the place that you're from isn't doing better than the United States is doing, how about you keep your second and third world ideas to yourself? We don't want to live like you. It hasn't been successful for you. Why would it be successful for us? That's why when Mexicans come here from Mexico and start trying to tell us the way that we're supposed to run the country, go back to Mexico. If it was so great there, that's where you need to be. If you really think that that's the way to run a country, then that's where you need to go. Also, when it comes to Somalia, if Somalia wasn't a shithole, y'all wouldn't be here. So stop trying to turn this country into Somalia or any version of Somalia. Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has huge problems with corruption as well as infrastructure. So when you come here with your big ideas, and this is who we think you should let in, and this is the way we think you should think. No, you do that back there. If you want to go back to the island of Puerto Rico and run it however you want to run it, how about you really push for sovereignty and independence, and then you run things exactly the way you think they need to be run? But you don't want that. Most Puerto Ricans would like to be a state, but I don't think that Puerto Rico deserves to be a state. I personally don't think that Puerto Ricans from Puerto Rico have integrated enough with the American way of life to really understand what it is we're going for in this country and what it is we're trying to accomplish. So I can't really see what having them as a state would help. And if you're in Puerto Rico or you're a Puerto Rican person that's listening to this and mad at what I'm saying right now, how about you fix that 47% number and then we revisit? Because for right now, I don't want to take your advice on anything. I, in my personal life, know people that are on welfare. I don't ask them for financial advice. I don't ask them how they think I should be running my life on the day-to-day.
More Puerto Ricans live in the U.S. than in Puerto Rico, and it's not even close. 9 million total population, 6 million in the U.S., 3 million in Puerto Rico. I mean, what benefit does America even get from having Puerto Rico as a territory? Why don't we just let it go?
And so while I agree with this guy on most of what he said, I don't agree that we should get rid of Puerto Rico as a territory because there are benefits, which some of those benefits would be major U.S. manufacturing hub. Puerto Rico is a key producer of pharmaceuticals and medical devices. Strategic location. It supports shipping, defense, and trade in the Caribbean. And if you ask me, that makes it worth keeping Puerto Rico as a territory. They do actually provide some benefit to us, but I don't think that they provide enough benefit to be worth the trade-off in making them into an actual state. And I do feel like if we were to consider making them a state at any particular point, what we really need to be sure of is that they have gotten that number down as far as the 47% of Puerto Rican households that are on some sort of public assistance. To me, that's a huge barrier to actually wanting them to be a full-on state, because if you ask me, the last thing we need is another Mississippi, which, sorry to my viewers in Mississippi, but if you look at the numbers as far as Mississippi goes, and a couple other states, and Puerto Rico, you'll see that it's kind of a similar situation. So in my opinion, what we need to do is work on our own currently existing mainland states that may need a little help and may need some extra figuring out. And hopefully while we're taking care of that here, Puerto Rico is figuring itself out and making itself worthy to be one of the United States. So yes, while I do agree that Bad Bunny's performance was terrible, I do agree that the NFL and Bad Bunny need to face sanctions if parts of his performance were in violation of FCC regulations. And I also do agree that the NFL does need to listen to the American public that has been its bread and butter for its entire existence. At the same time, I don't think that we need to throw out the baby with the bathwater and completely get rid of Puerto Rico as a territory. But let me know what you guys think down below. Like, comment, subscribe, hype if it's an option. Also, if you want to see a video of me talking about how I think TPUSA is the real winner in this Super Bowl situation, click the link on your screen. Other than that, as always, thank you for watching. This has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.